Against the merciless backdrop of Montana's winter, a young mother clutches her infant closer, watching her car's last wisps of steam disappear into the blizzard. Claire Jennings has run out of options, out of gas, and nearly out of hope. The wind howls like the demons she's fleeing, and her baby's weak cry pierces her heart. She's got nothing left but a duffel bag and the desperate prayer that someone, anyone, might find them before the storm claims them both. Through the curtain of snow, headlights appear like a mirage. Behind the wheel, Jack McAllister, a man who buried his heart alongside his wife and unborn child 5 years ago, slows his truck to a stop. Something about the sight of them awakens what he thought was long dead inside him. Can two broken souls, brought together by chance and necessity, find healing in each other's wounds? Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. 24 hours earlier, Claire had stood in her kitchen, staring at the last $43 in her wallet. Behind the worn bills, a torn photograph showed half of what used to be a family portrait, her side carefully preserved, his violently ripped away. Her hands trembled as she tucked the money back in, her fingertips brushing against the restraining order she'd received just last week. The document that was supposed to keep her safe, but had only seemed to make him angrier. Little Emily's soft coos drew her attention to the second-hand bassinet. 6 weeks old, and already her daughter knew to stay quiet when Mommy was scared. The thought sent a fresh wave of determination through Claire's bones. She wouldn't let Emily grow up learning to be silent, to be afraid. The weather report droned. From her phone, winter storm warning, severe conditions expected, all travel discouraged. Claire glanced at the meager supplies she'd managed to squirrel away over the past month. Diapers, formula, a few cans of food, and warm clothes that still smelled of the thrift store. Not enough to start over, but enough to escape. She'd planned to leave next week when her last paycheck from the diner cleared. But then she'd seen him today, sitting in his truck across from Emily's pediatrician's office, watching. He wasn't supposed to know where they were. The restraining order meant nothing to him. It was just paper, he'd always said. Paper burns. The baby whimpered, and Claire lifted her gently, wrapping her in the softest blanket she owned, a gift from Mrs. Rodriguez next door, who never asked about the shouting, but always seemed to bake extra cookies on the worst nights. "Shh, sweet girl," Claire whispered, breathing in that perfect newborn scent. "We're going on an adventure." She'd mapped the route carefully, back roads through Montana, staying off the main highways where he'd expect her to go. Her sister in Washington would take them in, help them start fresh. 3 days of driving if she was careful with gas. The old Corolla wasn't much, but it had gotten her to work and back for 2 years without complaint. It would have to be enough for one more journey. Night had already fallen as Claire loaded their meager belongings into the car. Emily, snug in her car seat, watched with solemn eyes that seemed too old for her tiny face. The garage door opened with a groan that made Claire wince, but no lights flicked on in the neighboring houses. No one stirred in the quiet suburban street. Only when they'd put 20 miles between them and the house did Claire let herself breathe. The radio stayed off. She needed to hear if any vehicles followed too long or too close. Emily slept peacefully, and Claire found herself talking softly, painting pictures of their new life. "You'll have a room with yellow walls," she promised, "and a window that catches the morning sun. We'll plant flowers in spring, and no one will ever tell us to be quiet again." The first flakes started falling around midnight. Claire gripped the steering wheel tighter, watching the white specks dance in her headlights. The weather report had warned about this storm, but she'd hoped to outrun it, to get through the mountain pass before it hit in force. The gas gauge dipped lower, and her heart sank as she passed another dark, shuttered station. She should have risked filling up back in town, but she'd been too afraid he might be watching the places she usually stopped. By dawn, the snow was falling so thick she could barely see the road. The engine made a sound she'd never heard before, a high-pitched whine that set her teeth on edge. Then steam started pouring from under the hood, and Claire knew with crushing certainty that they weren't going to make it to Washington. Not in this car, not in this storm. She managed to guide the dying vehicle onto what looked like a side road before it shuddered to a final stop. In the growing light, she could make out a wooden sign, half covered in snow. "Welcome to Thunder Creek. Population 847. She'd never heard of it. Emily began to fuss, hungry and cold, despite the blankets. Claire reached back to touch her cheek, finding it cooler than it should be. The car's heater had died with the engine, and the temperature was dropping fast. She had formula, but the water in her bottle was already starting to freeze. "Help, Will. Come," she whispered. "More prayer than promise. Someone will drive by. They have to." But even as she said it, she knew the storm was getting worse. The main road had been empty for hours, and this side road looked like it might see one car. A day in good weather. Claire pulled Emily into her arms, wrapping her own coat around them both. Through the swirling snow, she could just make out what looked like a mailbox in the distance. Maybe a house, maybe hope. If she stayed in the car, they would freeze. If she walked, they might freeze faster. But Emily's lips were taking on a bluish tinge that terrified her more than any storm. Claire tucked the baby inside her coat, closer to her heart, and reached for the door handle. Sometimes the only choice was between bad and worse, and she'd already left everything behind once today. She could do it again. Jack McAllister's wedding ring caught the dim light of his truck's dashboard as he gripped the steering wheel. 5 years, and he still couldn't bring himself to take it off. Sarah would have known exactly what to do about the young woman, and her baby stranded in this God-forsaken storm. Sarah always knew the right thing to do. He'd only gone out to check on the pregnant heifers in the north pasture. Standard procedure before a big storm, the kind of routine that had kept McAllister ranch running for 3 generations. The kind of routine that helped him pretend he was still living, not just existing in the empty spaces Sarah left behind. The ranch hands had all gone home early, his foreman Rodriguez practically ordering him to do the same. Storms coming in. "Mean boss, ain't nothing out there worth dying for." But Jack knew better. Sometimes the things worth dying for were exactly what you found in the worst storms. His headlights caught something pale through the curtain of snow. A figure huddled against an old Toyota, nearly buried in white. His foot eased off the gas. Before his mind fully registered what he was seeing, a woman, a baby. His hands tightened on the wheel, the ring pressing into his flesh like a reminder. The last time he'd seen Sarah, she'd been heading into town for a routine checkup. 7 months pregnant, glowing with their future. The storm that day hadn't seemed so bad, until it was. Jack closed his eyes for a moment, remembering the state trooper's face at his door. The words that had hollowed out his world. The ice. There was nothing anyone could have done. He'd stopped believing in God that day. Stopped believing in much of anything. The woman looked young, too young to be out here alone. The baby's cry carried faintly through the howling wind, and something twisted in Jack's chest. He'd never heard his child cry, never would. His truck idled, heat blasting against the windshield, creating a small circle of clarity in the frost. The smart thing would be to call the sheriff, let the professionals handle it. But cell service was always the first thing to go in these storms, and the nearest patrol car was probably an hour away in good weather. This wasn't good weather. The woman had spotted his headlights now. She turned, shielding her baby from the wind, and Jack saw fear flash across her face. Not just fear of the storm. She looked like a wounded animal, ready to run even if running meant death. He knew that look, saw it sometimes in his own mirror. Rodriguez's wife Maria had mentioned something last week about a women's shelter over in Missoula. "Full up," she'd said, shaking her head. "With this economy, seems like everybody's running from something." The baby's cry came again, weaker this time. Jack's hand moved to the door handle, then stopped. He'd worked hard these past 5 years to keep the world at arm's length. The ranch ran smooth, the books stayed balanced, and if he went whole weeks speaking to no one but his horses and the hands, well, that was his business. Letting strangers in meant letting in their problems, their chaos, their potential to shatter. What little piece he'd managed to piece together, but Sarah's voice echoed in his memory. A McAllister never turns their back on someone in need. It had been one of her favorite things about him, she'd said, back when he was still the kind of man who deserved that pride. The woman was struggling to her feet now, the baby clutched tight against her chest. Even from here, he could see she was shivering violently. The temperature was dropping fast, the kind of cold that killed in Montana winters, the kind of cold that wouldn't show mercy to a baby. Jack's fingers brushed against his wedding ring one last time. Then, with a deliberate motion that felt like breaking a spell, he turned it around so the smooth side faced out. The diamond setting, which had pressed against his finger for 5 years, shifted to the inside, present but protected, like the memories he carried. "Okay, Sarah," he whispered into the quiet cab of his truck. "Okay." He reached for the door handle again. This time, he didn't stop. The old family photos lining Jack's hallway caught the beam of his flashlight as he led them inside, their glass surfaces reflecting fragments of the past. Claire clutched Emily closer, trying not to stare at the images of happier times. A younger Jack in a black cowboy hat, his arm around a beautiful dark-haired woman whose smile seemed to light up the frame. Wedding photos, holiday gatherings, a life that had clearly ended. "Generator should kick in soon," Jack said, his voice rough from disuse. As if on cue, the lights hummed to life, revealing a living room that seemed frozen in time. Decorative, touches that could only have been a woman's. Hand-crocheted throws, carefully arranged wildflowers now dried with age. Delicate curtains that somehow survived in a bachelor's house. "Thank you," Claire managed, her teeth still chattering despite the warming air. "I don't know what we would have—" "Bathroom's down there," Jack cut her off, pointing. "Hot water should be working. Got some clean towels under the sink." He paused, struggling with words that seemed to pain him. "Probably some things that might fit you. In the bedroom, if you want to change into something dry." Claire recognized the offer for what it cost him. "I couldn't. They're just collecting dust." He turned away, boots heavy on the hardwood floor. "I'll make coffee," Emily whimpered, and Claire realized her daughter was as cold and wet as she was. The storm rattled the windows, making her jump. Out there, somewhere in the swirling white, was her useless car with everything she owned, everything she'd thought they'd need for a new life. The bathroom was like the rest of the house, clean but stuck in time. Feminine touches mixed with practical ranch life. A seashell soap dish beside a heavy-duty hand scrubber. Lavender-scented anything next to industrial-strength everything. Claire managed to warm Emily first, using the soft towels to dry her thoroughly before changing her diaper. The baby's eyes were heavy now, the terror of the storm fading into exhaustion. "You're such a brave girl," Claire whispered, kissing her daughter's forehead. "Just like we practiced, staying quiet when—" She stopped herself. They were safe. Now, at least for the moment. When she emerged, wearing borrowed clothes that smelled of cedar and forgotten summers, she found Jack in the kitchen. He stood at the counter, his back to her, shoulders tense as he measured coffee grounds with military precision. 2 mugs waited on the counter, one black, one decorated with painted sunflowers. He turned at her footsteps, then quickly looked away. The clothes, Claire realized. They must have belonged to— "Sugar's there," he said gruffly, nodding at a ceramic container. "Milk in the fridge if it hasn't gone bad. Don't get into town much in weather like this." Emily had finally drifted off, swaddled in one of her own blankets. Claire held her close as she sank into a kitchen chair, its wood worn smooth by years of similar moments, similar conversations maybe, or similar silences. "I can't pay you," she said finally, because it needed to be said, "for helping us, for the clothes, for any of it." Jack's hands stilled on the coffee pot. "Didn't ask for payment. No, but—" Claire swallowed hard. "People usually want something in return." He turned then, and Claire saw something flash across his face. Understanding, maybe, or recognition. "Storm's got another day, at least," he said instead of acknowledging her fear. "Roads won't be cleared till after. You can use the guest room. Lockwork's fine." The relief made her dizzy, or maybe it was exhaustion or hunger. Her hands shook as she reached for the sunflower mug he set before her, and some coffee sloshed onto the table. "Sorry," she whispered, reaching for a napkin. "I'll clean it, leave it." His voice was quiet but firm. He hesitated, then added, "Sarah always said life's too short to cry over spilled coffee." The name hung in the air between them. Claire cradled her mug, letting its warmth seep into her bones. Through the kitchen window the storm raged on, but here, in this strange time capsule of a home, she felt something she hadn't felt in months. Safe. Jack cleared his throat. "Guest room's this way. When you're ready." He didn't meet her eyes. As he added, "Take all the time you need." Claire wasn't sure if he meant with the coffee or in his home. Maybe both. She watched him retreat to what must be his study, leaving her alone with her sleeping daughter and a kitchen full of ghosts. Outside, the wind howled like lonely things, but it couldn't reach them here. Dawn crept into the guest room like a shy visitor, painting the walls in soft winter light. Claire woke to Emily's quiet noises. Not crying, just the gentle sounds of a baby discovering morning. For a moment, she forgot where they were, and panic seized her chest. Then she remembered the storm, the stranger, the sanctuary. She lifted Emily from the borrowed bassinet. It was just collecting dust, Jack had muttered last night, appearing at her door with it, and held her close. "Good morning, sweet girl," she whispered, checking her daughter's temperature with practiced anxiety. But Emily felt warm, perfect, her eyes bright with that newborn wisdom that sometimes made Claire's heart ache. The house creaked with early movement downstairs. Claire tensed, old instincts dying hard, but these weren't the angry footsteps she'd learned to fear. These moved with purpose but without menace, accompanied by the domestic sounds of coffee brewing and a radio playing softly. Weather reports, she guessed. Emily needed changing, and Claire had just finished when she heard Jack's heavy tread. On the stairs, followed by a hesitant knock. "Got some breakfast?" he called through the door, voice gruff with morning. "If you're hungry." In the kitchen, Claire found a spread that spoke of uncertain hospitality. Eggs scrambled with the precision of someone used to cooking for one, bacon, toast, and 3 different kinds of jam, all new jars, price tags hastily removed. He must have had them in storage, preparing for the long winter ahead. "Wasn't sure what you—" Jack stopped, his words falling away, as Emily turned her head at the sound of his voice and did something she'd never done before. She smiled. A real, full smile, not the random muscle movements of early infancy, but a genuine expression of pure joy, directed straight at this weathered rancher who stood frozen in his own kitchen. Claire felt tears prick her eyes. Emily was usually so solemn around strangers, a trait that had worried her pediatrician, but that Claire had secretly been grateful for. A quiet baby drew less attention, less risk. Jack looked like someone had struck him. He turned abruptly to the coffee maker, his movements jerky. "There's formula," he said, voice rough, "in the pantry. Rodriguez, my foreman, his wife dropped it off this morning. Said it was left over from their grandson's visit." The lie was transparent but kind. Claire had noticed the tracks of an early morning visitor in the snow outside her window, and she suspected Maria Rodriguez was the type of woman who knew exactly what a stranded mother might need. "Thank you," Claire said softly, sitting at the table with Emily secure in her lap. The baby was still watching Jack, still smiling, and something in Claire's chest loosened just a fraction. Jack kept his back turned, but his next words seemed to cost him something. "Sarah and we had all this stuff before. Never got to—" He cleared his throat. "Anyway, might as well get some use." Claire watched him pour coffee with hands that weren't quite steady. The morning light caught his wedding ring, and she noticed for the first time that he wore it turned around, the smooth band facing out. a small detail that told a story of its own. Emily chose that moment to let out a happy gurgle, reaching toward Jack with tiny fingers. Without thinking, Claire bounced her gently, an old habit of comfort. "She likes you," she said, surprised to realize it was true. "She's usually so careful with new people." Jack finally turned, coffee cups in hand. His face was composed now, but something in his eyes had changed. "Smart kid," he said gruffly. "Good instincts, like her mama running from that storm." The words hung between them, an acknowledgement that he knew she was running from more than weather. Claire waited for the questions to come, the demands for explanation that always followed kindness, but Jack just set her coffee down in the sunflower mug again and took his own to the far end of the table. "Storm's letting up," he said instead, nodding at the window where the sunrise was winning its battle against the clouds. "But roads won't be cleared till tomorrow at least. Your car," he paused. "I can have Rodriguez take a look once we can reach it if you want." It was an offer without pressure, a door without expectations. Claire sipped her coffee, letting its warmth spread through her as Emily continued to watch Jack with fascinated eyes. "Yes," she said finally, "I'd like that." Outside, the first rays of real sunlight broke through, catching the fresh snow and turning the world into diamonds. Inside, in this kitchen that had forgotten how to hold hope, Emily smiled again, and this time ever so slightly, Jack smiled back. The Thunder Creek Gazette lay folded on the diner counter, its headline declaring, "Winter storm brings record snowfall." But it was the smaller column that caught Claire's eye as she waited for their takeout order. "Local rancher takes in stranded. Mother and infant." No names mentioned, but in a town of less than 1,000 souls, anonymity was an illusion. "Don't mind Gertie," Jack muttered beside her, nodding toward the elderly woman behind the register who was making no effort to hide. Her scrutiny. "She's been writing that gossip column since before I was born." Claire clutched Emily closer, hyper-aware of the curious glances from the handful of breakfast patrons. The baby, bundled against the lingering cold, slept peacefully, unaware of her role in the town's latest drama. "Order for McAllister," called May, the waitress, her lined face softening as she looked at Emily. "Added extra biscuits, Jack. Growing family needs feeding." The words were kind but pointed, heavy with unasked questions. 3 days had passed since the storm. 3 days of Jack's quiet presence, of Emily's continuing smiles, of feeling simultaneously safe and terrified by that safety. The ranch house had become a refuge, but Claire knew better than to trust refuges. They had a way of disappearing just when you needed them most. "My car," she started to explain to May, but Jack's hand settled briefly, carefully, on her shoulder. "Rodriguez says the engine's shot," he said, his voice carrying just enough to reach the interested ears around them. "Wouldn't be right to send them out without reliable transportation, not with a baby." The diner's atmosphere shifted subtly. Claire felt the change, judgment softening into something closer to approval. A stranded mother was one thing. Jack, McAllister's guided redemption, was quite another. "Well," May said, adding a pie to their order with a flourish, "good thing you found them when you did. Weather Service says another system's coming in next week." Outside, Thunder Creek's main street was still piled with plowed snow, but the morning sun had brought out the townspeople. Claire noticed how they nodded to Jack, respectful, curious, but keeping their distance. 5 years of grief had taught them where the boundaries lay. They passed the general store, its windows decorated for the upcoming Valentine's Day, and Claire caught fragments of whispered conversations. "Sarah would have wanted, first time I've seen him in town, twice in 1 week. That baby's smile, did you see?" Jack guided them toward his truck, seemingly oblivious to the attention, but Claire noticed how he'd placed himself between her and the most obvious onlookers. Protective, but not possessive. She was learning the difference. "Need to stop at the hardware store," he said, helping her settle Emily's car seat, another mysterious gift from Maria Rodriguez, into the truck. "The ranch always needs something fixing. The hardware store proved to be a sanctuary of sorts, its narrow aisles and smell of wood shavings a barrier against prying eyes. Old Joe Henderson barely looked up from his inventory sheets, just grunted. "Lumber's in the back, Jack. Saved you those hinges you wanted." But even here, the ripples of change were evident. A young woman stocking shelves did a double take, then rushed to the back room. Moments later, her voice carried, "Mom, you were..." "Right. Mr. McAllister's here with them. The baby's beautiful." Jack's jaw tightened, but his voice remained gentle as he asked Claire, "You okay?" The question went deeper than the immediate moment. Claire thought about her car, now officially beyond repair, about the dwindling cash in her wallet, about Emily, who had slept through the night for the first time ever in that borrowed bassinet. "People talk," she said finally. "That's what people do. Ain't always a bad thing." Jack selected a box of nails with careful attention. Sometimes talk keeps folks safe, makes them think twice about causing trouble. The meaning was clear. In becoming the subject of Thunder Creek's gossip, she'd also gained its protection. A strange sort of safety, but safety nonetheless. At the counter, old Joe finally looked up. His roomy eyes settled on Emily, then moved to Jack's face. "Sarah bought a rocking chair from me," he said abruptly. "Never picked it up. Been taking up space in my storeroom. You should have it." Jack went still. Claire held her breath. "Need the space?" Joe added gruffly. "No charge." Later, as they loaded the rocking chair into the truck, honey-colored oak, perfectly sized for late-night feedings, Claire saw Jack brush his hand across its smooth arm. A gesture so quick she might have imagined it, like the ghost of a dream finally starting to wake. The restraining order lay on Jack's kitchen table like a wounded thing, its official stamps and seals unable to mask the fear embedded in every word. Claire's hands shook as she smoothed its creased edges. She'd folded and unfolded it so many times the paper was wearing thin at the corners. "His name is Andrew Reeves," she said quietly, watching Emily sleep in the new rocking chair. 2 weeks had passed since the storm. 2 weeks of borrowed safety that felt increasingly like home. He was different at first. They always are, aren't they? Jack stood at the sink, his back turned, but Claire could see the tension in his shoulders. He'd found the paperwork while helping her sort through what they'd salvaged from her car. She'd waited for him to demand explanations, to withdraw his hospitality. Instead, he'd made coffee and waited. "I was a nurse at County General," she continued, the words coming easier in the gentle creak of the rocking chair, the soft whisper of Emily's breaths. "He was a pharmaceutical rep. Charming, said all the right things, brought coffee to the nurses' station, asked about my day like he really wanted to know." The coffee cup in Jack's hands clicked against the counter too hard. He set it down deliberately. "When did it change?" His voice was carefully neutral. "After the wedding. Little things at first. Checking my phone. Questions about male patients. He said he was just protective." Claire's laugh held no humor. "Protective? I was so stupid." "No." Jack turned then, his face lined with a grief that wasn't just his own. "You weren't stupid. You were loved. People who love you are supposed to protect you, not..." He gestured at the restraining order, unable to finish. "I left once, early on. Stayed with my sister in Washington. He found us, convinced everyone I was having a breakdown. Said he just wanted to help." Claire touched Emily's cheek, grounding herself in her daughter's warmth. "When I found out I was pregnant, I knew I had to go, really go. But he said he'd changed. Said the baby needed a father." Jack's hands gripped the counter's edge. "The baby needs safety. So do you." Last time," Claire whispered, "he came home angry. I don't even know why. There's never really a why, is there? I was 7 months pregnant. He shoved me. Not hard," he said later. "Just a little shove. I caught myself on the table, but..." Her hand drifted to her side, where the bruises had long since faded. "I called the police that night. First time I ever did. They helped me get the order, but it's just paper," Jack finished. He'd moved closer, not touching her, but present, solid. Claire nodded. "He started showing up everywhere, outside my work, at my doctor's appointments, just watching. The police said they couldn't do anything unless he actually violated the order. Unless he hurt me again." Her voice broke. "I couldn't wait for that, not with Emily." Jack was silent for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice carried the weight of decision. "Rodriguez's wife, Maria. She volunteers at the women's shelter, over in Missoula. Knows people who can help make paper mean something." Claire looked up sharply. "I can't ask." "You're not asking. I'm offering." He met her eyes steadily. "This is your home as long as you want it, yours and Emily's, but you need more than a roof. You need legal help, real help." "Why?" The question escaped before she could stop it. "Why would you do this for us?" Jack's gaze drifted to the family photos on the wall, then back to Emily, sleeping peaceful and safe. "Because Sarah would have. Because it's right. Because—" He touched his wedding ring, still turned smooth side out. "Because sometimes God, or fate, or whatever you believe in, gives you a second chance to be the person you should have been all along." Emily stirred, making those small sounds that meant she'd be hungry soon. Claire lifted her daughter, this miracle, who had given her the courage to run, to survive, to hope. "I'm scared," she admitted. "Not just of him, of everything." "I know." Jack's voice was gentle. "But you're not alone anymore. Neither of us is." Outside, a spring wind rattled the windows, not a threatening howl like that first night, but a cleansing breeze that carried the promise of thaw. Claire held her daughter close and let herself believe, just for a moment, in the possibility of real safety, of home. The restraining order lay forgotten on the table, its power fading in the face of something stronger. Community, protection, family, hope. The first wildflowers of spring pushed through the melting snow like tiny declarations of defiance. Claire found them one morning while walking the fence line with Emily snug in her carrier, their daily ritual now that the weather had turned. Purple pasque flowers, Maria had called them, first bloomers tough as boot leather, just like Montana women. She knelt to touch one delicate purple petal, remembering the bouquet of them she'd found on the kitchen table last week. Jack hadn't mentioned putting them there, but she'd caught him watching when she arranged them in Sarah's old mason jar. "Your daddy's got a soft heart under all that ranch dust," Maria had said yesterday, showing Claire how to work the industrial washing machine in the ranch's mudroom. The older woman had become a steady presence, arriving most mornings with practical gifts disguised as cast-offs and wisdom wrapped in ranch wife practicality. The sound of hoofbeats drew Claire's attention. Jack was checking the pregnant heifers, a task she'd learned was crucial this time of year. She watched him move with the easy grace of someone born to this life, so different from the stiff, uncertain man who'd found them in the storm 6 weeks. "Ugh," Emily cooed, reaching toward the horses with eager fingers. At 3 months old, she was already showing what Maria called ranch baby spirit. Fascinated by the animals, content to watch the endless Montana sky, sleeping soundest when the wind sang through the prairie grass. "Want to get closer?" Claire asked her daughter, surprising herself with the offer. A month ago, she would have retreated at the first sound of approach. Now she found herself walking toward the fence, where Jack had reined his horse to a stop. "Checking for more flowers?" he asked, his voice gentle in the way it always was when he spoke to them. "Maria says they're early this year." "Nature doesn't always follow our schedules," Claire said, then smiled at the unexpected wisdom in her words. Jack's expression softened as Emily reached up toward him, her newest habit. Without discussion, Claire lifted her daughter up to him. He settled her securely in front of him on the saddle, his big hands ensuring her safety while allowing her to feel the horse's movement. "She's a natural," he said, pride warming his voice. "Got good balance." Claire leaned against the fence, watching her daughter's face light up with joy. These moments still startled her, the easy trust, the casual intimacy of family. She'd learned Jack's rhythms now. Coffee at dawn, morning rounds, paperwork in the afternoon, dinner together in the kitchen that no longer felt haunted by memories. Rodriguez says we'll need help with the spring carving, Jack said carefully, the way he did when testing new ground between them. Could use someone with medical training, if you're interested. Claire looked up sharply. I haven't practiced. Since Emily. He nodded. But you've got the knowledge. Rodriguez's wife says you helped deliver the Hendersons' baby last week when the midwife got stuck in Missoula. News traveled fast in Thunder Creek. The birth had been unexpected, twins coming early, no time to get to the hospital. Claire's training had taken over before she could second-guess herself. The gratitude in Beth Henderson's eyes had awakened something she thought she'd lost. I could show you, Jack continued, adjusting his hat against the spring sun. What to look for, how to help, could use a steady hand when things get complicated. Claire recognized the offer for what it was. Not just a job, but a future. A place. A purpose. I'd like that, she said softly. Emily chose that moment to laugh, a bright sound that echoed across the prairie. Jack's smile in response was like watching spring itself arrive. Slow, gentle, transforming. Later, as they walked back to the house together, Jack leading his horse, Emily still babbling happily in his arms, Claire spotted more wildflowers, pushing through the thawing earth, purple, yellow, white, colors returning to a world too long held in winter's grip. Sarah loved spring on the ranch, Jack said suddenly, his voice steady despite the weight of memory. Said it was like watching the world remember how to hope. Claire touched one of the pasque flowers, its petals silk-soft against her fingers. She sounds like she was very wise. She would have liked you, he said quietly. Both of you. The words settled between them like seeds taking root. Claire breathed in the sharp, clean scent of melting snow and new grass, of horses and earth and possibility. I think, she said carefully, I would have liked her too. Above them, meadowlarks called their spring songs. And somewhere in the distance, a calf bellowed for its mother. Emily reached for another wildflower, and Jack showed her how to touch it gently, how to love something delicate without breaking it. Claire watched them. These two people who had become her home and felt her own, heart slowly, steadily beginning to thaw. The garden tools lay untouched in the shed, where Sarah had left them 5 years ago, their handles still bearing the bright paint she'd used to mark them as hers. Claire found them while searching for plant markers. Maria had suggested starting a small herb garden, something to keep your hands busy while your heart settles. Each tool told its own story. The trowel with SM painted in cheerful yellow, a watering can decorated with hand-drawn wildflowers, garden gloves sized for smaller hands than Jack's. A half-finished project of painting butterflies on clay. Pots sat on the workbench, brushes still arranged as if their owner had just stepped away for a moment. She was painting those the morning it happened. Claire turned to find Jack in the doorway, his frame blocking the spring sunshine. She hadn't heard him approach, unusual for a man whose boots normally announced every step. I'm sorry, she said quickly. I shouldn't have... No, his voice was rough but certain. It's time somebody used them again. She'd have hated seeing them gather dust. He moved into the shed, his presence filling the small space without crowding her. These past 2 months had taught Claire the difference between men who use their size to intimidate and those who carried it like a responsibility. Jack had never made her feel trapped. Tell me about her? The request surprised them both. They'd developed an unspoken agreement not to probe each other's wounds, but something about the abandoned garden tools made Claire brave, if you want. I mean. Jack picked up one of the butterfly pots, his calloused fingers tracing the unfinished design. She was a teacher, 4th grade, had a way of seeing the best in everyone, even when they couldn't see it themselves. He smiled faintly. Especially then. Moving carefully, he sat on the workbench, the pot still in his hands. We met at the county fair. I was judging livestock. She was chaperoning her class. One of her students got scared on the Ferris wheel, and Sarah, he shook his head, remembering. She rode it 6 times with that kid, singing Disney songs at the top of her lungs, until the fear turned to laughter. Claire settled on an old garden stool, Emily sleeping peacefully in her carrier. The baby had developed an uncanny ability to sense when quiet was needed. "She sounds wonderful," Claire said softly. She was. Even after we lost the first baby, she kept that light in her. Said God had a plan, we just couldn't see it yet. His hands tightened on the pot. When she got pregnant again, everything seemed perfect. We were converting my old office into a nursery. She was 7 months along, had just finished painting clouds on the ceiling. He trailed off, and Claire felt the weight of what came next. The story Thunder Creek knew, but never spoke of. "It was just a routine checkup," Jack continued, his voice distant. "Weather report said the storm would hit that evening. She wanted to get back before it started." He set the pot down with careful precision. "Highway patrol said the other driver lost control on the ice, crossed the median. They said," his breath caught, "they said it was quick, that neither of them suffered." Emily stirred, making the small sounds that preceded waking. Jack's eyes fixed on her, present again. For a long time, I was angry at God, at fate, at myself for not driving her that day. He stood, moving to the shed door where morning glory. Vines had begun climbing the frame. Kept thinking if I'd just gone with her, maybe I could have. "You can't know that," Claire said gently, understanding now why he'd been out driving in that blizzard the night he found them. Why he couldn't. Leave another mother and child to fate's mercy. No, he agreed. But Sarah would say everything happens for a reason, even if we don't understand it at the time. He turned back to her, his face softened by morning light. She kept a journal, writing to the baby. "I've never been able to, but maybe you'd want to plant what she planned. The herbs, the flowers. Her drawings are all there." The offer hung between them, heavy with trust. Claire stood carefully, adjusting Emily as she woke. "I'd be honored," she said, "but only if you help. Show me what she loved, what she dreamed for this place." Jack nodded, emotion making speech difficult. Then Emily, fully awake now, reached for him with her usual perfect timing. He took her with practiced ease, and Claire marveled at how natural it looked, this man who'd lost so much, holding new hope in his arms. "We'll start tomorrow," he said finally. "Weather's supposed to be fair." Claire picked up Sarah's painted trowel, feeling the warmth of spring sunshine through the open door. Sometimes healing came in unexpected ways, through storm-forced sanctuary, through a baby's trust, through gardens waiting to bloom again, through love, patient enough to wait for wounds to mend. The Thunder Creek Spring Festival flyer fluttered on the ranch house refrigerator, secured by a magnet shaped like a cowboy boot. "Annual town gathering and picnic," it proclaimed in cheerful letters, "celebrating 127 years of community." Below, it hung a Polaroid from last week, Emily's first Easter, captured by Maria's ancient camera. In the photo, Jack held the baby, while Claire arranged Easter lilies in Sarah's mason jars, none of them aware they were being photographed. It was the first family photo in the house that didn't belong to the past. "You don't have to go," Jack said now, watching Claire study the flyer for the 10th time that morning. Town'll understand, but Claire knew better. 3 months had passed since the storm that brought them here. 3 months of casseroles appearing on the porch, of knowing nods at the general store, of Thunder Creek slowly accepting them into its fold. The festival wasn't just an invitation, it was a test, a chance for the town to see what they were becoming. "Emily needs a new sunbonnet anyway," she said lightly, though her hands trembled slightly as she lifted her daughter from the high chair, another of Maria's found items that fit perfectly in their kitchen. "And you heard May. She's making her famous strawberry pie." Jack's expression softened with understanding. "Rodriguez says the whole town shows up. Could be overwhelming. Good thing we'll have backup then." Claire nodded toward the window where Maria's truck was pulling up, right on schedule. Jack's foreman's wife had appointed herself their unofficial sponsor in Thunder Creek society, a role she took as seriously as her husband took cattle breeding. Maria bustled in without knocking, bringing the scent of lavender and fresh baked cookies with her. "Perfect day for the festival, cool enough for the baby, warm enough for picnicking." She eyed Claire's simple sundress with approval. That color suits you, honey, brings out your eyes. The dress had appeared in Claire's room last week. Tags removed, but clearly new. Like so many things in their new life, it was a gift she'd learned not to question. Thunder Creek's town square was already filled with families when they arrived, blankets spread on the grass, children weaving between display tables laden with local crafts and baked goods. Claire felt the ripple of attention as they walked in. Jack McAllister, at a town event for the first time in 5 years, with a young mother and baby beside him. "Jack! Claire!" May waved from her pie stand, her welcome loud enough to carry. "Bring that beautiful baby over here." It was like a signal. Suddenly they were surrounded by genuine smiles, gentle greetings, careful not to overwhelm, but clear in their acceptance. Old Joe Henderson appeared with a handcrafted wooden rattle, just something I was tinkering with. Beth Henderson, whose twins Claire had helped deliver, insisted on holding Emily while Claire tried some of May's pie. Sarah loved this festival, a quiet voice said. Claire turned to find Agnes McAllister, Jack's aunt, watching them with tear-bright eyes. She always said it was when Thunder Creek felt most like family. Claire held her breath, but Jack's hand found the small of her back, steady and sure. "Still does, Aunt Agnes," he said softly. The old woman's face crinkled with joy. She pressed something into Claire's hands, a worn photo album, its leather cover soft with age. "Found this while spring cleaning. Thought you might like to see how the ranch looked in different seasons. Help you plan that garden you're starting." Claire opened it carefully. The first page showed Sarah, radiant in a sundress, painting butterfly, pots in the garden shed. "She was so talented," Claire said, meaning more than just the painting. "Yes," Agnes agreed. She knew how to love this place, these people, how to help a man remember his heart. She squeezed Claire's hand. "Some talents run deep in certain souls." The afternoon unfolded like a flower opening to the sun. Emily was passed from proud honorary grandmother to honorary aunt, collecting kisses and blessings. Jack stayed close, but not hovering, letting Claire find her own rhythm with their neighbors. She found herself sharing nurse stories with Beth, gardening plans with Agnes, recipe secrets with May. As sunset painted the sky in Montana gold, Jack spread a blanket under the old oak tree. Claire settled beside him, Emily drowsy in her arms. Around them, Thunder Creek celebrated spring, community, and the subtle magic of healing hearts. "You doing okay?" Jack asked quietly. Claire watched Emily's eyes drift closed, one tiny hand clutched in Jack's shirt. She thought of the photo album in her bag, of Sarah's garden waiting to bloom again, of the way love could surprise you with second chances. "Yes," she said, and meant it. "We're right where we need to be." In her pocket, the festival flyer crinkled. No longer an invitation to prove themselves, but a reminder that sometimes home finds you when you least expect it, and family grows in the most unexpected gardens. The threatening letter arrived on a Tuesday, mixed in with ranch invoices and seed catalogs. Claire recognized Andrew's handwriting instantly. The precise, controlled strokes that had once seemed sophisticated now looked as cold as she remembered. Him. Her hands shook as she read the words, each line calculated to remind her that peace was temporary, that running had consequences. "I know where you are. Did you think a small town could hide you? Hide my daughter?" Emily was napping upstairs, in what they now called her room, the clouds Sarah had painted watching over her sleep. Through the kitchen window, Claire could see Jack and Rodriguez working with the spring calves, their movements sure and steady in the afternoon sun. The scene was so normal, so right, that the letter in her hands felt like a venomous thing that had slithered into paradise. "Claire," Maria's voice startled her. The older woman stood in the doorway, a basket of fresh vegetables from her garden in her arms. One look at Claire's face, and she set the basket down, moving quickly to her side. "What is it, honey?" Claire couldn't speak, just handed over the letter. Maria read it, her weathered face hardening with each line. Without a word, she went to the door and called out, "Jack, you're needed in here." His boots on the porch steps, the screen door's familiar creak. Sounds that had come to mean safety now seemed fragile against the threat in her hands. Jack took in the scene. Claire's pale face, Maria's protective stance, the letter that had shattered their Tuesday peace. "He knows," Claire whispered. "He's going to—" "No." Jack's voice was quiet, but held the same steel she'd heard when he faced down a charging bull last week. "He's not going to do anything." He read the letter, his jaw tightening. "Maria, call your cousin at the sheriff's office. Then call that lawyer friend of yours in Missoula." Maria was already moving to the phone, her usual cheerful demeanor replaced by ranch wife efficiency. Claire watched them mobilize with a strange detachment, as if viewing the scene from outside herself. This was how it started last time. People wanting to help, making plans, promising protection. But Andrew had worn them down one by one, his relentless persistence disguised as concern, until she'd found herself alone again. "Claire." Jack knelt before her chair, not touching but present. "Look at me." She forced herself to meet his eyes, expecting to find pity or worse, doubt. Instead, she saw the same steady strength that had guided them through winter storms and spring floods. "This isn't like before," he said, reading her fear. "You're not alone this time. This isn't just your fight. I can't ask you to—" "You're not asking? We're telling." Maria's voice was firm as she returned from the phone. "Sheriff sending a deputy out. Lawyers making space in her schedule for tomorrow morning. And I've got calls to make." Claire knew what that meant. In an hour, every ranch wife in the county would know to watch for strange vehicles, to report unfamiliar faces. Thunder Creeks. Gossip Network was about to become an early warning system. "But the ranch," Claire protested weakly. "Your life here. I don't want to disrupt." "Life gets disrupted." Jack's voice held an echo of old pain, of lessons learned. "Doesn't mean you stop living it. Doesn't mean you don't fight for what matters." Emily's cry from upstairs cut through the tension. Claire moved to rise, but Maria was already heading for the stairs. "I'll get her, honey. You and Jack need to talk strategy." Left alone in the kitchen, Claire felt the walls of panic closing. Jack? He's dangerous. Not just violent, he's smart. Knows how to work the system, how to make people believe. "I believe you." The words were simple, but held the weight of mountains. "Everyone here believes you." That's not something he can change with smooth talk or fancy lawyers. "How can you be so sure?" Jack's hand moved to his wedding ring, not to touch it, she realized, but to slowly, deliberately remove it from his left hand. She watched, scarcely, breathing as he slid it onto his right hand instead. "Because Sarah taught me that love means protecting what matters, no matter the cost." He met her eyes. "And you and Emily, you matter. To this ranch, to this community, to me." The letter lay on the table between them, its threats impotent against the stronger bonds they'd built. Outside, Rodriguez was already riding the perimeter, checking fences with new purpose. Maria's voice drifted down from the nursery, singing Emily's favorite lullaby with fierce tenderness. Claire felt something shift inside her, not the familiar spiral of fear, but something stronger, something that felt like roots taking hold in fertile soil. "Okay," she said softly, then stronger. "Okay, tell me what we do next." Jack smiled, and she saw in it the same steel that had kept the ranch running through loss and grief. Now we show him what family really means." Jack's old military service photo sat on Sheriff Cooper's desk, part of a file Maria's cousin had pulled together overnight. Claire studied it while the sheriff talked. A younger Jack in dress uniform, before loss had etched its lines around. His eyes, the image of capable protection, exactly what Andrew had pretended to be. 2 tours in Afghanistan, Cooper said, tapping the photo. Special Forces. Town remembers when Jack came back, helping his daddy run the ranch while still serving. As a reserve instructor, man knows something about securing perimeters. They'd gathered in the sheriff's office at dawn. Jack, Claire, Maria, Rodriguez, and Beth Henderson's husband Tom, who served as Thunder Creek's only lawyer. The morning sun through the windows cast their shadows long across the worn floorboards. Andrews. "Smart," Claire warned. Emily sleeping against her chest in the carrier. He'll have a plan, papers that look official, people willing to vouch for him. Let him try. Maria's voice held the quiet authority of 3 generations of ranch wives. We've got something better than papers. We've got witnesses. Tom Henderson nodded, spreading documents across Cooper's desk. Statements from Beth about the twins' birth, medical records showing your injuries from before, testimony from your old nurse supervisor. And he smiled grimly. Every shop owner in Thunder Creek who's watched you and Emily become part of this community. Plus security footage, Cooper added, from the diner, the general store, anywhere he might have been watching from. Mays, been reviewing her cameras, said she thought she spotted someone matching his description last week. Claire's hands trembled. He's been here already? Testing boundaries, Jack said quietly, like a wolf circling the flock. But wolves learn. Quick about Montana ranches. Rodriguez cleared his throat. Hands are all aware. Got extra patrols riding the fence lines. Installed those new security cameras you ordered, boss. Motion sensors, too. My deputy's sister works dispatch over in Missoula, Cooper continued. She'll call the moment anyone matching his description checks into a hotel, and state police are aware. They owe me a favor from that drug bust last summer. Claire looked around the room at these people who had become her defenders. Maria with her network of ranch wives. Rodriguez with his quiet competence. Tom with his legal expertise. Cooper with his law enforcement connections. And Jack, who hadn't left her side since the letter arrived. We've got something else, Maria said, pulling out her phone. Show her, Jack. Jack hesitated, then reached into his jacket. The paper he withdrew was old, the creases well worn. A letter, written in familiar flowing script. Sarah wrote this, he said softly. The day before the accident. Never mailed it, found it in her desk last night. Claire took it carefully, reading through tears. Dearest Jack, if you're reading this, something's happened. You know me, always preparing for storms that probably won't come. But if they do, remember what you promised the day we married. That love means being strength for others when they can't be strong alone. You have so much strength, my love. Don't let grief make you forget how to use it. All my love, Sarah. She knew, Jack said, his voice rough. Knew I'd need reminding someday. That letter's been waiting all this time, for this moment. Claire handed it back, understanding now why he'd moved his wedding ring. Not to let go, but to transform what it meant. From a chain of grief to a badge of purpose. We've got cars posted at every road into town, Cooper continued. Ranch wives are organized in shifts to stay with you and Emily. Even old Joe's got his grandson watching the security feeds from the hardware store. And if he tries legal channels? Claire asked. The fear was still there, but it felt different. Now more like preparation than panic. Tom smiled. Let him try explaining to a judge why he violated the restraining order to follow you across state lines. My paralegal's already documenting everything. He won't get near you or Emily, Jack promised. Either he's smart enough to realize that and leaves, or he's stupid enough to try something and gives Cooper here a reason to arrest him. Speaking of smart, Maria added, Gertie's running a special piece in the Gazette. Local ranch family. Stands against domestic violence. Nothing names you directly, but everyone will know. No one in 3 counties will help him once that runs. Claire looked down at Emily, still sleeping peacefully. Her daughter had never known a moment of fear in Thunder Creek, had never heard a raised voice or felt an angry hand. She deserved that peace. Okay, Claire said, straightening in her chair. Tell me what else I can do to protect our home. Jack's hand found hers, warm and steady. Outside, thunder rolled across the prairie, spring storms gathering. But this time, Claire wasn't running from them. This time she was standing her ground. The police report lay unfinished on Sheriff Cooper's desk, waiting for the final details of a confrontation everyone knew was coming. It arrived on a Thursday afternoon, while Claire was helping May with the diner's lunch rush, a calculated show of normalcy that hid the tension thrumming through Thunder Creek. The bell above the diner door chimed. Claire looked up from refilling coffee cups to find Andrew standing there, his suit as impeccable as always, his smile as practiced as she remembered. For a moment, she was back in that hospital corridor, charmed by his perfect manners and apparently gentle heart. Then Emily cooed from her carrier behind the counter, where May had been entertaining her with wooden spoons and cookie tins, and the spell broke. Claire wasn't that naive nurse anymore, and Andrew's smile couldn't hide the cold calculation in his eyes. "Hello, Claire." His voice carried just enough concern to sound reasonable to strangers. "You've led me on quite a chase." May's hand found Claire's arm, steady and grounding. Through the diner's wide windows, Claire saw old Joe Henderson already on his phone at his usual table. Across the street, Beth Henderson was hurrying into the sheriff's office. "You need to leave." Claire's voice emerged stronger than she expected. "The restraining order is from another state." Andrew's smile didn't waver as he took a step forward. "I'm here as a concerned father. Surely no one would deny a man the right to see his child." "Your rights." May's voice cracked like a whip. "Honey, the only right you've got in my diner is the right to turn around and walk out before—" The screen door creaked. Jack filled the doorway, Rodriguez a solid presence beside him. They must have broken speed records getting in from the ranch. "Before what?" Andrew's composure slipped just slightly. "Before more people help hide my daughter from me. I have lawyers." "So do we." Tom Henderson's arrival completed the circle forming around Andrew. "Would you like to explain to them why you violated a restraining order? Or should we start with the documented history of abuse?" Andrew's mask cracked further. "You've poisoned them against me." He took another step toward Claire. "Told them your lies. The only liar here is you." Claire moved Emily's carrier further behind the counter, though she knew Andrew couldn't reach her. Not with Jack and Rodriguez blocking his path. Not with May's shotgun under the register. The bruises told the truth. The medical records told the truth. The fear in your other victims' eyes, yes, I found them, told the truth. "You're hysterical." Andrew's familiar tactics emerged. "Everyone can see you're not thinking clearly. Running away with my child, hiding in some backward town. Thunder Creek ain't backward about protecting its own." Sheriff Cooper's arrival through the back door made Andrew start. "And Claire and Emily? They're ours now. You can't..." "Can't what?" Jack's voice was deadly quiet. "Can't stand between you and someone you want to hurt? Can't document every threat, every violation, every time you've come within 100 miles of this restraining order?" He moved forward, and Claire saw Andrew register the military bearing beneath the ranch's exterior. "Can't make sure every judge from here to Washington knows exactly what kind of man you are?" "I have rights." "You have chances," Cooper cut in. "2 of them. Leave now. Never contact Claire or Emily again, and we forget you violated the restraining order. Or push this, give me a reason to arrest you, and face charges in 3 counties. Andrew's composure cracked completely. "You think some small-town cops and cowboys scare me? I'll have lawyers here by morning. You'll what?" Claire stepped forward, Emily's soft breathing behind her, giving her courage. "Hit me again? Make me apologize for making you angry? Convince everyone I'm crazy?" She laughed, and the sound held no fear. "Look around, Andrew, really look. No one here is fooled by your act. No one here is going to help you hurt us." The diner had filled silently during the confrontation. Ranch wives lined the counter, their faces hard as Montana. Winters, old Joe's grandson, captain of Thunder Creek's volunteer fire department, stood with his crew by the door. Even Gertie from the Gazette was there, her ancient camera documenting everything. "Last chance," Cooper said quietly. "Walk away. Because if you don't, if you try anything, there won't be a square foot of Montana soil where you won't be watched. Where someone who knows your face, knows what you are, won't be ready to stop you." Andrew looked around the diner, at the wall of community standing between him and his target. For the first time, Claire saw real fear in his eyes. "This isn't over," he tried, but the threat sounded hollow even to him. "Yes," Claire said softly. Jack's solid presence at her shoulder, Emily's peaceful breaths behind her, Thunder Creek's strength surrounding them all. "It is. When the door closed behind him, when Cooper's deputy confirmed he'd gotten in his rental car and headed east, Claire finally let herself shake. Jack's hand found hers, and May produced a cup of sweet tea from somewhere, and Emily kicked happily in her carrier, unaware that her world had just been defended by an army wearing ranch boots and diner aprons. The police report would record it as a simple trespassing warning, but everyone in Thunder Creek would remember it as the day Claire Jennings stood her ground, surrounded by the family she'd found in the storm. The dinner plates Claire set out that evening were Sarah's wedding china, delicate white porcelain, with a pattern of silver leaves that caught the last rays of sunset through the kitchen windows. She'd found them in the back of a cupboard, while stress cleaning after Andrew's departure, and something made her pause, made her think about family treasures and the weight they carried. "You should use them," Maria had said softly, helping her dust each piece. Sarah always said fine china was for living, not hiding away in boxes. Now, Jack watched from the doorway as Claire arranged 3 place settings. The third, tiny plate, for Emily, who had recently started grabbing for anything within reach at mealtimes. His expression held something she couldn't quite read, something between memory and possibility. "First steps," he said suddenly, and Claire turned to find him watching Emily in her high chair, where she was determinedly reaching for a wooden spoon. "Sarah and I used to talk about first steps, first words, all the firsts we'd celebrate at this table." Claire's hands stilled on the silverware. These moments still came sometimes, raw honesty that caught them both off guard, that needed to be handled as carefully as the china. "We don't have to use these," she started, but Jack shook his head. "No, it's time. Past time." He moved to help her, his calloused hands gentle with the delicate plates. Emily's first real family dinner. Seems right. The word family hung in the air between them, warm as the summer evening breeze through the open windows. 3 days had passed since Andrew's confrontation at the diner. 3 days of the community gradually relaxing its protective guard, of life settling back into its rhythms. But something had shifted, had crystallized in that moment when they'd all stood together against the threat. "Jack," Claire said carefully, setting down the last fork, "when you faced Andrew, what you said about protecting us, did you mean every word?" He turned to face her fully. "Claire, Emily chose that moment to successfully grab the wooden spoon, letting out a crow of triumph that startled them both. They turned to find her beaming, brandishing her prize with the pride of a warrior claiming a sword. Jack laughed, the sound rich and real and healing. Just like her mama, brave enough to grab what she wants. Claire felt tears prick her eyes. "I was so scared for so long, scared to want anything, to trust anything." She touched one of the china plates, its pattern smooth under her fingers. "But that day in the diner, seeing everyone stand with us, seeing you stand with us, I'll always stand with you." Jack moved closer, careful as always to telegraph. His movements to let her set the pace. "Both of you, if you want that, if you're ready." Emily babbled happily, reaching now for Jack with her free hand, the wooden spoon forgotten. He lifted her with practiced ease, and Claire watched her daughter pat his cheek with complete trust, complete love. "Sarah's letter," Claire said softly, "about being strength for others. You've been that for us. But Jack, you should know, you and this place, this community, you've helped me find my own strength again, not just found it." His voice was rough with emotion. "You've always had it. The strength to leave, to protect Emily, to start over, that was all you. We just gave you somewhere safe to plant those roots." Emily yawned, snuggling into Jack's shoulder with the complete confidence of a child who had never known anything but safety in his arms. The setting sun painted them in soft gold, and Claire felt the last of her fear dissolving. "I'd like that," she whispered, "to plant roots, to be a family, a real one." Jack's free arm wrapped around her, and Claire leaned into his solid warmth, feeling Emily's small hand pat her hair. Through the window, she could see Sarah's garden coming back to life under their care. New growth, twining with established plants, creating something both honored the past and embraced the future. "We already are," Jack murmured into her hair, "have been since that first storm." The china gleamed in the fading light, witnessing another first. Their first dinner as an acknowledged family, their first evening without fear shadowing the corners, their first step toward a future they'd build together. Emily reached for her tiny plate, and Jack settled her in her high chair. Claire lit the candles Maria had left, for celebrating, she'd said with a knowing smile, and took her place at the table that had waited so long for joy to return. Outside, the evening wind sang through the prairie grass, carrying away the last echoes of winter storms and old fears. Inside, in the warm circle of candlelight, three-place settings waited to collect new memories, new stories, new love. Sometimes, Claire thought, watching Jack cut Emily's food into tiny pieces with infinite care, the finest china was meant for ordinary moments, made sacred by simple joy. The ranch deed lay open on Jack's desk, its official letterhead stark against the weathered wood. The modifications were simple but profound, adding Claire's name alongside his, creating a trust for Emily, ensuring that whatever came next, they would always have a home here. He'd spent weeks working with Tom Henderson to get the paperwork right, to make sure every detail was perfect. But it wasn't just legal documents he was planning to present tonight. The small box in his pocket held his grandmother's engagement ring, reset with stones from both his mother's and Sarah's rings, a blending of family histories, of past and future, that Maria had helped him arrange. "It's right," Maria had said, watching the jeweler carefully merge the precious stones. Sarah would want her love to be part of what comes next. Now Jack stood in Sarah's garden, no, their garden now, transformed by Claire's careful tending. The evening light caught the stained glass wind chimes they'd hung together, sending rainbow patterns dancing across the new growth. Emily's laughter drifted from the kitchen, where Claire was giving her an early dinner, the sound as much a part of the ranch now as the wind in the grass or the cry of meadowlarks. "Almost ready," Claire called through the screen door. "Just cleaning up the sweet." Potato explosion. Someone's getting better with a spoon, but accuracy is still a work in progress. Jack smiled, touching the box in his pocket. 6 months had passed since that stormy night when fate had brought them to his door. 6 months of morning coffee shared in comfortable silence, of Emily's first words. Naturally, horse had followed. Quickly after mama, of Claire's quiet confidence blooming like the wildflowers she'd planted. He'd known for weeks that he wanted this, wanted them, permanently. But he'd waited, giving Claire time to feel truly safe, truly settled, watching for signs that she was ready for more than sanctuary. The sign had come yesterday when he'd overheard her talking to Emily during their morning walk. "Look, sweet girl," she'd said, pointing to the distant mountains. "That's the Bridger Range. They'll be your mountains too, always. This will be your home, where you'll learn to ride and rope and be brave and strong like your daddy Jack." She hadn't known he was within earshot, hadn't said it for anyone's benefit but Emily's. The simple truth of it had squeezed his heart. The screen door creaked. They still hadn't fixed it, both of them secretly loving the homey sound. And Claire stepped out with Emily on her hip. His daughter, in his heart. She had been his daughter. For months now, wore the tiny cowgirl outfit Agnes had sewn her, complete with miniature boots that never failed to make him smile. "Someone wanted to see the sunset," Claire said, then stopped at his expression. "Jack, what is it?" He took a deep breath, suddenly grateful he'd practiced this with Rodriguez that morning. "Remember when you asked me why I was out driving that night, the night I found you?" Claire nodded, shifting Emily to her other hip. The baby reached for one of Sarah's wind chimes, endlessly fascinated by their music. "I used to drive during storms," he continued, "looking for someone to save maybe, some way to make sense of what happened to Sarah." He moved. Closer, heart pounding. "Didn't realize I was the one who needed saving until you two showed up, Jack." Claire's voice was soft, understanding dawning in her eyes. He withdrew the box, opening it to reveal the ring with its harmoniously blended stones. Sarah taught me how to love. But you and Emily, you taught me how to live again, how to hope, how to believe in second chances. Emily reached for the ring, bright eyes fascinated by its sparkle. Claire's free hand covered her mouth, tears spilling over. This ranch, Jack continued, gesturing to the deed on his desk, visible through the study window. It's got your name on it now. If you want it, if you want everything, us, a family, forever. Jack McAllister, Claire whispered. Are you asking? I'm asking if you'll marry me, if you'll let me be Emily's father in every way that matters, if you'll help me make this ranch a home again. He took a shaky breath. I'm asking if you'll take a chance on forever with a broken old rancher who loves you both more than he ever thought possible. Emily chose that moment to grab one of the wind chimes, setting off a cascade of rainbow music. Claire laughed through her tears, the sound mixing with the chimes and the evening wind and Emily's delighted giggles. Yes, she said, reaching for him. Yes to all of it, to forever and family and... She stopped, laughing again as Emily patted their faces, bringing them together. To everything. The ring fit perfectly, its blended stones catching the last light of day. Above them, the wind chimes sang their blessing, and somewhere, Jack thought, Sarah was smiling at the way love worked its own kind of healing magic. A home, Claire whispered, looking out over the ranch that had brought them together. Our home, Jack agreed, holding his family close as sunset painted their world in colors of promise. The hand-drawn family tree spread across their kitchen table, its branches growing more intricate with each addition. Claire watched as Emily's small hand, guided by Agnes's weathered one, pressed a tiny purple thumbprint beside her name. There, sweet girl, Agnes said, her voice warm with emotion. Right where you belong, between your mama and daddy. The adoption papers sat nearby, finally complete after months of legal work. Tom Henderson had outdone himself, coordinating with authorities across state lines, building an ironclad case that even Andrew's expensive lawyers couldn't crack. But it was the family tree that made it real, the visual representation of how love could grow new branches from old roots. Look, Emily, Claire pointed to the different names. There's Great-Aunt Agnes and Grandpa McAllister who built this ranch, and here's your daddy's Mama Rose. She paused at Sarah's name, written in Jack's careful hand, connected to him with a line of gold ink. And here's Sarah, who helped make this place ready for us. Say wah, Emily echoed, reaching for the name with sticky fingers. At 18 months, her vocabulary grew daily, shaped by the rhythm of ranch life and the love of an extended family that defied traditional boundaries. That's right, precious. Agnes smiled, dabbing at her eyes. Sarah would have loved watching you grow up here. Jack appeared in the doorway, his work boots dusty from morning chores. His eyes softened at the sight of them gathered around the family tree, this piece of art that Maria had suggested as a wedding gift. Something to show Emily where she comes from, all the love that made her possible. Rodriguez says the South Pasture's ready for the ceremony, he said, crossing to drop a kiss on Emily's curls. Wild roses blooming right where you wanted them, Claire. The wedding was set for next week, a simple gathering that had somehow grown to include half the county. But they'd wanted it this way, to celebrate with the community that had become family, to show Emily that love grew best when it was shared. Did you get the papers filed? Claire asked, though she could read the answer in his smile. Tom had. The judge signed them this morning. Jack's voice roughened with emotion. It's official, Emily Grace McAllister, if that's still the name we want. Claire gathered Emily close, breathing in the sweet baby scent that lingered despite her daughter's headlong rush into toddlerhood. It's perfect. Sarah's middle name, your last name. She smiled up at her soon-to-be husband. Our name, Agnes. Busied herself with the ink pads, pretending not to wipe away tears as Jack sat beside them, adding his own thumbprint to the family tree. His hand found Claire's, squeezing gently. Been thinking, he said carefully, about the nursery. Sarah's. Clouds are fading a bit, Claire held her breath. They'd left the nursery largely unchanged, a bridge between past and present that Emily had accepted as naturally as she accepted everything about her home. Thought maybe, Jack continued, we could paint new ones. Together. Keep the design, Sarah. Started, but make it ours too. Add some stars, maybe. Emily loves stars. Stairs, Emily agreed enthusiastically, though she meant the twinkly lights they'd hung on the porch. Perfect timing, Agnes said, her voice suspiciously bright. I found some of Sarah's old sketches in the attic yesterday, her plans for the whole room. She'd drawn little animals peeking out from behind the clouds. Never got to finish them, but she pulled a weathered sketchbook from her bag. Thought you might want to see them, maybe use them, make them your own. Claire opened the book carefully, finding pages of whimsical drawings, rabbits riding cloud carriages, deer leaping between star clusters, horses with wings soaring through painted skies. On the last page, Sarah had written, "For all the dreams this room will hold." Oh, Claire whispered, understanding the gift they were being offered, not just permission to change things, but an invitation to continue what Sarah had begun. To take the love she'd poured into this home and help it grow into something new. Doggy! Emily pointed to a sketch of a puppy chasing a moonbeam. Want doggy? Jack laughed, the sound free and joyful. Think that's a hint? Maybe after the wedding? Claire smiled, adding her own thumbprint to the family tree. One big change at a time, Agnes gathered up the ink pads, her task complete. The family tree would hang in the living room, Claire knew, alongside photographs that tracked their journey, the storm that brought them together, Emily's first steps in the garden, Jack teaching her to feed the horses, Claire in her nurse's uniform at the new clinic in town, a visual testament to the way love could take broken pieces and make something whole. Family, Emily declared suddenly, patting the paper with decisive satisfaction. That's right, baby girl. Jack gathered them, both close, his arms sure and strong. That's exactly right. The birthday cake sat proudly on the kitchen table, its single candle waiting to be lit. Emily's first birthday as a McAllister, though she'd been that in their hearts long before the papers made it official. Claire had decorated it herself. With coaching from May, tiny purple flowers made of frosting circling a carefully piped "Happy Birthday, Emily Grace." 1 year since the storm that had brought them here. 1 year of transformations as profound as the changing seasons outside their windows. Cake time yet? Jack's voice carried from the front door, where he was helping Rodriguez wrangle the birthday girl after their morning ride. Emily's delighted giggles echoed through the house, their house now, filled with the kind of joy that made memories of fear seem distant as winter shadows in summer light. Almost, Claire called back, adding one final flower to the cake's decoration. Maria and Agnes should be here any minute. As if summoned, cars began appearing down the ranch road, carrying the family that had chosen them, that had helped love bloom in fallow ground. Claire watched through the window as Emily ran to greet each arrival, her dark curls bouncing. Jack's old hat, sized down by Maria, perched proudly on her head. The nursery upstairs bore witness to their journey. Sarah's clouds now twined with stars and animals that Claire and Jack had painted together, using Sarah's sketches as inspiration. New photographs lined the walls. Emily's first ride on her pony, Claire in her clinic office helping deliver the Peterson twins, Jack teaching Emily to bottle feed a spring calf. A family built on purpose, on choice, on love that grew stronger. For having known grief, look what I found in town. May's voice preceded her through the door, carrying a package wrapped in cowgirl patterned paper. Though I hear someone's been dropping hints about wanting a puppy instead of presents, Claire laughed, remembering Emily's recent fascination with old Joe's new shepherd pup. Jack's already got one picked out from the new litter at the Wilson place. We're surprising her next week. The kitchen filled quickly with familiar faces and loving hands bearing gifts and food. Beth Henderson's twins toddled after Emily, all 3 girls wearing matching boots that Agnes had found just lying around the attic. Rodriguez's wife arranged flowers from Sarah's garden, their garden, in mason jars along the windowsills. Quite a difference from last year, Sheriff Cooper observed quietly, accepting a cup of coffee. When I got that call about a stranger's car abandoned in the storm, Claire nodded, remembering the desperate fear of that night, the way hope had seemed as distant as summer. I thought I was running away, she said softly. Didn't realize I was running home. Some things are meant to be, Maria declared, arranging. Emily's presence. Sarah always said this place had magic in its soil, growing things that needed growing, healing things that needed healing. Jack appeared in the doorway, Emily on his shoulders. Ready for cake, princess? Down, Daddy, Emily commanded, practically vibrating with excitement. Mama, cake, please. Claire lit the candle, and their family gathered close. Emily, secured in Jack's lap, reached for Claire's hand as they all sang. The late afternoon sun painted the kitchen in familiar gold, catching the diamond in Claire's wedding ring, the one that held stones from 3 generations of McAllister love. Make a wish, sweet girl, Jack whispered. Emily screwed up her face in concentration, then blew with all her might. Wish for forever, she announced as the flame flickered out. Forever's a good wish, Agnes said, dabbing at her eyes. Though you're not supposed to tell already coming true anyway, Jack said, his voice rough with emotion. Right here, every day. Claire touched the family tree hanging nearby, its branches now extended with Emily's adoption, their marriage, the new life they'd built together. Through the window, she could see the garden where they'd made their vows, the pasture where Emily had learned to walk, the mountains that had watched over their healing. Thunder rolled in the distance, a spring storm approaching, the kind that brought wildflowers and renewal. Emily clapped her hands in delight at the sound. Story storm, Mama, like our story. That's right, baby. Claire gathered her daughter close, feeling Jack's arm strong around them both. Storms brought us home. The first drops of rain began to fall as May served cake and Maria poured coffee and Agnes started one of her famous ranch tales. Emily ran to the window with the twins, their small faces pressed to the glass in wonder. Outside, the prairie grass danced in the wind, and the roses Sarah had planted years ago lifted their faces to the life-giving rain. Claire leaned into Jack's embrace, watching their daughter, their miracle, point out a rainbow emerging through the storm clouds. Sometimes love came like thunder, she thought. Sometimes it came in the quiet moments between lightning strikes, and sometimes, if you were very lucky, it came in both ways, strong enough to weather any storm, gentle enough to heal any heart. Happy. Birthday, sweet girl, Jack murmured, and Claire heard in his voice all the love that had brought them here, all the joy yet to come. The storm sang its blessing, and their family celebrated, and love bloomed wild and free as prairie roses after.
Rain.